All right. So Li Fang, in my opinion, I've said this before, he is the least audience captured reporter working today in the indie media space, meaning I don't think he's audience captured at all. You know he's not audience captured? I can't predict what his take is going to be on any
Right.
given issue. He is completely independent. He just calls it like he sees it. He called out all of the people who are claiming that Politico was funded by USAID. So here's Bill Ackman. It is shocking, but perhaps not surprising that the Biden Harris administration used USAID, the agency whose purpose is to administer the funding of international aid, to fund a left wing media organization that attacked the administration's opponents. This is my editorial comment. This is a very good example of how muddy the terms left and liberal have gotten. Politico is a right wing organization by any meaningful standard. They have no sympathy or affection for actual leftists or left ideas. But to continue, if this is not prima facie corruption, what is it? What other media organizations does USAID fund? How about Wikipedia? And Lee smacked that down. These funds include payments during the first Trump administration, and the actual money from USAID to Politico was entirely for subscriptions and totaled 44,000. That's peanuts. Please, for the love of God, look at the details before tweeting. He goes on. The actual scandal in ultra expensive DC news services, many cost 10 to $150,000, is that these entities will dig up vital public interest news information, and only lobbyists can afford to read the news, making these services no different from an extension of lobbyist intel gathering. Politico owns lots of data services and news entities. If you read the government contract disclosures, the US government buys ultra expensive Politico Pro services as well as subs to E&E, an energy regulation newswire owned by Politico, Agency IQ, regulation data firm owned by Politico, etc. Um, he goes on. Here's Politico's parent, Axel Springer's financials. Page 32 shows they make 492 million euros a year from their US division, aka Politico. Politico prints money largely from hedge funds, lawyer, lobbyist subs, and corporate advertisers. 1 million a year via the government is not much. And finally, USAID does in fact fund journalism all over the world in a real way, with strings attached to tell reporters what to cover and how to shape public opinion. That deserves scrutiny. But the political subscription money conspiracy is crap. I explain here. So, this is Lee's article on this. We're just going to read a little bit of it. Um, this morning, I woke to several friends and readers asking me about viral social media claims from last night regarding USAID and Politico. The conspiracy theory suggested that ongoing spending cuts at USAID, the foreign aid agency, were shutting down domestic media outlets supposedly dependent on government money. As evidence, several large accounts noted that Politico personnel had failed to receive payroll. Politico management, in an email, attributed the issue to a technical error that would be fixed shortly, yet many suspected a direct connection. Here is one of many viral tweets making this claim. Says Kyle Becker. Fun fact: Politico received US aid funds. Everything makes sense now. So the number you've probably heard if you've been following this is 8 million. This says 8.1 million. On Tuesday, it was reported that staff at Politico did not get paid for the latest pay period. The company just sent several emails to employees saying it believes there was a technical error and is looking into how to fix the issue. So here's Lee. This is wrong on many counts. USAID contract records show that the agency spent a grand total of only $44,000, not the 8.1 million claimed in viral tweets on Politico LLC for subscription services. For context, Politico operates two forms of news services. General political news content is published on the Politico website and its email list for free, supported by advertising. For sophisticated readers, business executives, lobbyists, and government agencies, Politico provides paywalled pro subscription services that cost over $10,000 per login for up to the minute detailed reporting
Wow.
on policy decisions and regulations. The government pays for this information, and Politico offers other branded services in this category, such as subscriptions to E&E energy reporting and agency IQ. Now, as Lee points out in his other tweet, that's the scandal. Like the peasants get one news, but the people who
Right.
really are inside the system, they get the real news. They get the real shit. And Politico presumably spends a lot of money to have people sitting on government departments all day long so that they have that up to the minute information. That's very much like that's how Bloomberg built his fortune. That's what a Bloomberg terminal does.
Right.
You can hit a button on a Bloomberg terminal, it'll show you where every oil tanker in the world is at that moment. That's what you're paying for with these services. That's their real business, not you proles reading
Right.
their article about how Nancy Pelosi crapped herself at an event.
Right. Right.
Um, this isn't unique to Politico. Bloomberg and LexisNexis, among others, serve the data industry news subscriptions for tens of thousands of dollars, sell similar data industry news subscriptions for tens of thousands of dollars, focusing on exclusive political and policy related reporting. The 8.1 million in Politico subscriptions referenced above relates to years of subscriptions by agency officials across the government. There is no evidence that the freeze in U.S. aid funding had any impact on Politico payroll. That said, USAID does separately fund various questionable news operations. Coda Story, an anti disinformation news outlet headquartered in New York, revealed in its audit report that the National Endowment for Democracy, the sister nonprofit that works alongside USAID, provided special grants to finance its journalistic ventures. The Organized Crime and Corruption Reporting Project, a major investigative news outlet responsible for the Panama Papers and other blockbuster news series, relies heavily on State Department and USAID funding. Ryan Grimm recently reported that U.S. government money comes with strings. Officials have used their leverage over OCCRP to influence editorial and personnel decisions at the outlet. Unlike Politico, there is actual evidence that the freeze on U.S. aid spending is impacting the American government's quasi shadowy constellation of news operations all over the world. Voice of America reported independent news outlets in more than 30 countries, including Austria, Ukraine, and Myanmar, are facing cuts or are at risk of shutting down over the U.S. aid freeze. Ironically, of course, Voice of America is also funded by by American taxpayers. So here you got U.S. aid freeze spells uncertain future for international media. So Lee is far from a lib. Yeah, he's yes, absolutely. USAID's doing all kinds of dodgy funding of the media, but this is total bullshit. He goes on, he's been on quite a Twitter tirade about all of these unsubstantiated claims that are going viral. Michael Tracy actually weighed in. There's an entire network of granular trade industry publications that hardly anyone's ever heard of that effectively wall off the info from the public because no normal person would pay the exorbitant fees. Confabulating pseudo scandals does not address this long-standing issue. On the money, as he tends to be. Um, okay, so here's another one. the original tweet is Trump called for an investigation to find out who in the government has been getting kickbacks from U.S. aid. For instance, AOC has been in Congress for 6 years. She makes $174,000 a year. She is worth $30 million. The only way that happens is kickbacks, Lee says, and I trust Lee a lot more than Mila Joy, whoever the fuck that is. Every day there are mega viral tweets just so absurdly untrue it boggles the mind. AOC is worth less than 10K. Bernie and Warren take zero pharma PAC money. There's plenty to criticize about these politicians that isn't fabricated bullshit. So Ian Miles Chong, font of wisdom that he is, weighs in. You sure about that, Chief? And he shows this with Sanders getting over $1 million from pharmaceutical companies and Elizabeth Warren. Lee's clapback is pretty epic. Ian, you have no idea what you're talking about. Put down the bag of Malaysian shrimp chips and read carefully. These are aggregates of small dollars, not PAC money. It includes janitors and clerks who happen to work at Pfizer. Nothing corporate controlled, and it was community noted with links if anyone wants to go look at the original tweet. Now, Keaton, this is kind of like the lost version of Apocalypse Now. He was going to cover this, and we never got to it. So do you want to weigh in on this before I go on?
Yeah, it got kind of old by the time we were going to cover it, and there was more important stuff to cover. Maybe it'll come up at a certain point. But yeah, I mean, obviously, the Bernie pharma money thing was complete bullshit. Absolute complete bullshit. And I have the exhibits ready to make. So depending on, how much of a meltdown me saying this triggers in the comments section, maybe I will. Maybe I will prove.
We may spend our entire Sunday show on this.
We may
on this
just go
South
out
Africa.
of our way. Yes, we may unnecessarily go out of our way to prove what absolute bullshit it is. No, if you look at opensecrets.org, first of all, okay, so RFK says, you are the top receiver of pharma dollars in 2020. First of all, he picks 2020, which is the year he ran for president, which is the year he would be one of the top Senate recipients of funding because he was the senator who went furthest in the presidential campaign. He says pharma dollars, not big pharma dollars, right? That's what a lawyer he is. He says, you're the number one recipient of pharma dollars. That means pharma manufacturing, and then there was one other pharma section in the Open Secrets list of trades. Bernie Sanders was number one among accountants. He was number one among clothing and accessory designer workers. Do you think he's in the pocket of big handbook? Like, those were obviously small dollar donations from people who worked in that industry. Walmart, they say one of the number one employers, one of the top employers of Bernie, or two of the top ones, were Walmart and Amazon. Does that mean Jeff Bezos wants Bernie Sanders to be the president? Like, it was such transparent and obvious bullshit, and it spread so far and wide with such little pushback because Elon doesn't bother.
Just ended Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren's careers.
Absolutely absurd. And like I said, depending on the meltdown that this triggers, because I know it'll trigger a little bit, I might actually prove it. So that be forewarned. If you give us too much shit about this, I might embarrass you. I might embarrass you if I find it worthwhile. But I mean, look, transparent. I mean, transparent to the point where anyone who was like sharing that is totally discredited. Totally discredited. And especially like if in RFK's context, you want people to trust you with personal decisions about their health, and then you go out and you propagate such transparent bullshit, and then you get indignant when people don't want to take your advice as to what medicine to give or not give their kid. Get fucked. Get fucked. I mean, see, I'm getting to the point where I want to cover it now again, so I better stop. But they have such contempt for their own supporters to put that shit out there, and this is a similar thing.
Or I'll just sitting there masturbating and munching on those Malaysian shrimp chips. Okay, so here's another claim that was going around. This one from Andrew Huberman. Okay, now I'm going to have to speak up. Assuming the below is accurate, HHS government, that's Health and Human Services, and NIH, National Institute of Health, could have used that $29 million US to fund approximately 20 full 5-year NIH grants to laboratories to do basic research, including overhead costs. This is egregious. WTF. And he's responding to Ian Miles Chong again. The U.S. government gave the New York Times tens of millions of dollars over just the past 5 years, despite paying relatively little money to the New York Times in the years preceding 2021. For instance, in August 2024, the U.S. government awarded $4.1 million to the New York Times, to which Lee responds, Jesus Christ. You should operate assuming every viral political tweet from an influencer is inaccurate until you look into the evidence yourself. This 29 million does not show money to the New York Times. It shows money to anything with New York, like NYU. This is how stupid this is.
No,
so,
it's
so on this level, look, there are, as anyone from the left will tell you, there are a lot of issues with these government agencies. No, they're not full of Marxists. Organizations like USAID have usually been aimed at overthrowing socialist governments and suppressing leftist movements and propping up right-wing and autocratic and authoritarian governments like Pinochet. But hey, yeah, a lot of what they're putting out is true. They're avoiding the core of the issue or the leftist critique. They just want to talk about how they put money into a woke dance troupe. But okay, you cannot trust these people because they don't give a shit what the truth is. You can't, just because this gets tweeted out by Elon Musk, who pays an effective tax rate of 3.27%, that they're wasting money. You can't believe it. He's absolutely right.
Or
You
any of these ball lickers. This is the thing. They're not going to get community noted either.
Right.
Even though it's obvious bullshit. The RFK stuff barely got community noted at all. A couple tweets did. Most of them didn't. This is not going to get community noted because they're doing Elon's bidding. That's why. Tell me how this is not a psyop. Tell me how this is not a giant psyop.
Well,
to have
and
these
also,
absolute fucking illiterate morons running around sharing data they know absolutely nothing about that does not hold up to the barest minimum of investigation or scrutiny, which is what Lee Fang does because he's a pro.
Right.
I mean, it's an obvious. I mean, it's an absolute clown show.
Well, and this is why I always call out Lee Fang, like, hey, for those of you who aren't just looking for outrage bait, who really want to know what's going on, I don't always agree with his takes, which is to his credit. That's a real reporter.
Yeah, that's fine.
That's a real reporter. Sometimes he has a take I don't agree with, but I can never predict it. He's honest. He follows the facts where they lead. And, I don't mind disagreeing with somebody if it's an honest disagreement based in intellectual rigor and not in jerking the knee. And this is where a lot of people in our space who chase the clicks by ginning up the outrage, you're gonna have to be very careful, man. You're gonna have to be very careful. Don't believe because you heard it from Donald fucking Trump and Elon Musk that it must be true. You want to see how ridiculous the claims are?
Yeah, here's the big one.
How ridiculous they are. This one's hilarious. My God, now they think USAID was sending money to Jeffrey Epstein, not realizing that it's a different Jeffrey Epstein. We are honestly in parody mode. Lee, laugh emoji.
That's true. There's a big brouhaha. Dun, dun, dun. Jeffrey Epstein.
They were giving money to Jeffrey Epstein. So this is what we're in. Like, yes, they're uncovering some real stuff. They're not emphasizing the real stuff. They're emphasizing the distraction stuff with the USAID files and what they're finding at Treasury. They're not going to the Pentagon, which God knows what they would find there. And a lot of stuff that they tell you they found is just total bullshit anyway. You certainly can't. It shouldn't even have to be said, but I'm going to say it. Just because Elon Musk retweeted it, that doesn't make it true. You are going to have to individually evaluate every claim, and most of us don't have time for that. Go to reporters that can be trusted like Lee. And a lot of people that we formerly trusted have decided that they're going to jump on the MAGA bandwagon, So you got to sort those things out too. But I would say Lee is one of the best guides you're going to get through the disinformation of the next 4 years.
Yes, and this
At
crop,
least 4 years.
yeah. This crop of ex-influencers with these massive viral accounts, they feel no obligation to the truth whatsoever. They
Not
are
at
on
all.
an
Not at all.
ideological mission. They are on an
Yep.
ideological mission to convince people that the administrative state is the enemy and not the rich. That is what they are on a mission to do.
That's it.
And they are succeeding. And they are succeeding. And they will say anything to propagate that narrative. And it falls to people to combat it. And as a free speech absolutist, you know, I'm happy to do that work. I don't want some faceless bureaucrat to tag Aaron Huberman's bullshit as misinformation and take it down. No, he has the right to be a bullshit artist, and we have the right to call him a bullshit artist. That's how it works. That's discourse. That's how you actually win the trust of the public, not by silencing the bullshit artists, but by debunking them. And that's what we are doing, and we're going to keep doing it, and we're going to win in the long run. We are going to win in the long run. This is an absolute circus of amoral freaks who are going to, at the end of the day, implode under that weight. It is just a matter of how much damage they will do in the meantime.
And as you said about X, because we have to use it for research very often, for video clips, or we have to find tweets that are in the news, they suppress a lot of things that they do not want emphasized. For example, when I was doing the research for my Tulsi segment, something that people were really talking about, which means it should have been high in the algorithm, was Tulsi's answer about the assassination of Soleimani. Could not find that no matter what keywords I put in. I finally had to find out who was questioning her, and I had to go to YouTube altogether. I had to find the full clip of that exchange. I forget who it was. It was Gillibrand. It was Gillibrand. And I had to find it within that. You're going to tell me that would not have circulated naturally? It was suppressed. Anything, I found that with the nominees in general. Anything that made them look bad was very hard to find.
Yep.
Stuff that made them look good, where they owned the senators, that stuff was top of search.
Yep.
Please clap.